13 years of silence. This morning, my doorbell sang like nothing ever happened. On my porch, designer luggage practiced smiles and a speech about family. They didn't ask to come in. They announced they were moving in. After all, I have so much extra space. After all, I'm not safe handling sudden money alone. Funny how danger only shows up when your bank balance does. I didn't raise my voice. I raised an eyebrow. I poured coffee into the good cups, the ones no one bothered to visit when I needed company, and said, "Let's talk about what you think you're owed." 13 years is a long time to study people. I learned the math of boundaries, the interest rate on disrespect, the compound cost of cutting a mother out and calling it growth. I learned lawyers' names. I learned how to document everything. I learned that when you finally stop begging for a seat at someone else's table, you discover you own the house. They rolled in their suitcases like victory. I watched them cross the threshold like a line of credit. Being drawn. Calm is a weapon when the other side expects collapse. So I smiled the kind that means receipts, and I did what I should have done years ago. I asked for specifics. How much? How long? What exactly does family entitle you to when family hasn't called in over a decade? Eyes flickered, stories shifted, words like obligation, protection, and best for you floated through my living room, like air freshener sprayed over rot. There's a folder in my side table. It knows more than their rehearsed apologies. It knows balances, dates, investigations, deadlines. Before this conversation ends, a clock will start. A choice will be offered, and someone will walk out changed. They came for a windfall. They're about to meet a boundary. And for once, I won't apologize for the door that closes or the line I draw. My hand stayed on the door not to block the way, but to remind myself I decide who crosses it. I'm Ione Mercer, a mother who learned the hard way that silence can be louder than shouting. 13 years is plenty of time to grow a spine and a savings account. I've painted this porch, twice planted tomatoes, 3 springs in a row, and learned to drink my coffee while it's still hot. Today, I pour 2 cups for uninvited guests and keep a third for the woman I finally recognize in the hall mirror. Come in, I say the way a homeowner does when she's not auditioning for love. Say plainly what you want. I set the cups on coasters no one ever used when I needed company. The good china doesn't rattle, neither do I. They step over the rug I bought with my first small victory. And I make a quiet promise the begging ends here. They don't sit, they plant themselves. Caius Mercer, my estranged son, clears his throat with the confidence of a man who once called me baggage. Beside him stands Vesper Mercer, née Hale, his wife, all clean lines and careful smiles. Family duty, she says, like it's a passcode. Space like this shouldn't be wasted, he adds, glancing at my walls the way. Realtors glance at commissions. I nod, count to 13 1 year per silent season, and set the record straight. Family duty, I repeat, works both ways. The words land between us like keys on a table. He looks past me toward the kitchen, toward the future he thinks is already his. She pats his arm, a rehearsed gesture. I remember the last time he touched me, a quick shoulder squeeze at a graduation photo before the world told him I was an anchor. You're not my burden, I say softly, but I'm not your safety net. The living room stops breathing. I lead them down the hallway past the mirror that's seen more apologies than I've heard. The glass is honest. It shows Caius Mercer avoiding my eyes, his jaw working like he's chewing a script. Vesper Mercer scans square footage, the way bargain hunters scan price tags. My reflection looks steady, older, yes, but finally on my side. We drift into the room where our last real conversation exploded. Old carpet, the new rug, now. I motion to the couch. They hesitate, then sit. I take the chair opposite the one with a view of the mantel, family photos up to a point. Then a sudden stop. Tell me, I say, what brings you to my door after 13 years. Not why what. I don't ask for feelings. I ask for facts. The clock ticks the way it has ticked through birthdays, holidays, and empty place settings. He opens his mouth, then closes it. She leans forward to fill the vacuum. The mirror behind her keeps telling the truth. Back then, I begin, you were 32, and very successful at saying cruel things politely. The words taste like aspirin, bitter helpful. I'm not here to score points. I'm here to set terms. You called me your baggage, I continue, and I believed you. I remember cleaning out a drawer of Mother's Day cards. I never got to send tossing recipes that served no one learning the quiet choreography of living alone. I also remember the precise temperature where dignity boils. It's the moment you stop asking someone to love you. Across from me, Caius Mercer stares at the floor as if it might offer a refund. Vesper Mercer reaches for a smile that doesn't arrive. 13 years is a long time to reconsider the word baggage, I say, especially when the suitcase on my porch is yours. I let that sit exact and heavy. He looks up ready to argue history. I raise a hand. We won't rewrite it. We'll bill it. Sit, I say. But it's not a command. It's a reset. They sink into the sofa that used to sag under apology. I take the firm chair that never pretended to be comfortable. We'll keep this simple, I add. Simple is a mercy older women give themselves when life has been complicated enough. Start with what you want. No preamble, no mist. Caius Mercer glances at Vesper Mercer, who nods like a metronome winding up. They talk about security, about unsafe headlines, and opportunists who circle new money like gulls at a picnic. I let them list dangers that somehow waited 13 years to materialize. I stir my coffee. The spoon taps the mug steady as a heartbeat coming back. Here's what I want, I reply. Truth in whole numbers. Their eyebrows rise. My voice doesn't. If we're discussing safety, let's admit what's dangerous. Pretending history didn't happen. I lean forward, elbows on knees. So what's the number? The air tightens like a belt. They try the soft angle. We're worried about you, Vesper Mercer says. Palms up a televised empathy. People take advantage. Caius Mercer echoes a fraction behind. We could stay a while, she offers. Manage the noise, filter the requests. I think about noise, the drip in my kitchen, I fixed with YouTube, and an honest wrench. Protect me, I repeat, as if tasting a spice I didn't order. I keep my tone even the way nurses keep their hands calm during a difficult needle. Protect me from whom? Their eyes do a quick inventory of excuses and land on abstraction. From the wrong people, he answers finally. The ones who show up when there's money. I nod slowly as if connecting dots on a page we all can see. People who vanish until there's something to take. I say then return with luggage and a plan. Her smile freezes. His throat clicks. So yes, I conclude we should talk protection. The room leans in. Let's skip the mist, I say. How much do you think you're owed, not help? Owed. The word lands like a gavel. Caius Mercer blinks. Vesper Mercer recovers first. We don't want your money. She claims we want family back. I've heard sales pitches sweeter than that. On supermarket sample trays. Family, I ask. 13 years is a long return window. He tries another lane. Alone maybe, just to stabilize. We all know stabilize is the cousin of just for now. I hold up a gentle hand, the same one that taught him to tie shoes, and stopped waving at his rearview mirror. If we're discussing loans, we'll discuss terms, I say. But before terms come totals. The clock in the hallway announces itself, an old friend clearing its throat. Numbers first, I repeat. The mug warms my palm. The question warms the truth. She inhales, he exhales. Their story shifts like furniture dragged across the floor. Finally, they name a figure. It's not small. I didn't waste the silence, I tell them. In 13 years, I learned to balance a checkbook and a heartbeat. I took community classes with women who wore wedding bands and steady shoes, and with widows who could fix a lawnmower by feel. I learned what a beneficiary is, and more importantly, what a boundary is. I changed my locks and my mind. When people talked down to me, I took notes. When people talked straight, I bought them lunch. I met an honest financial planner. I learned about trusts, not the kind you break, the kind you build. I started reading contracts without hurrying. Most of all, I practiced telling myself the truth before asking it of anyone else. Across the coffee table, Caius Mercer fidgets like a teenager in church. Vesper Mercer tries to smile without showing teeth. So when you say help, I continue, understand, I know the price of every word on that label. The old me would apologize. The new me itemizes. I slide open the side table drawer and lay a manila folder on the wood. Paper has a way of sobering a room. This, I say, is my memory with dates. The tabs are neat because a woman alone learns early that neatness is cheaper than chaos. Before we talk about living arrangements or loans, we'll talk about these. I don't wave the folder around. I don't need theater. I let the weight of paper do its work. Caius Mercer glances at Vesper Mercer. She gives a small shake of her head, the universal sign for don't admit anything yet. I don't chase them. I center myself in the chair I paid off with coupons and determined patience. You mentioned protection. I remind them. Good. This is what protection looks like. Records, names, balances. The clock ticks again, louder now that the air has thinned. We'll walk through it line by line, I add. Unless you prefer, I read it out loud first. The folder waits. So do I. They reach for the soft blanket of biology. But we're family, Caius Mercer says, as if that erases late fees on lost years. Family comes first. Vesper Mercer adds, giving me the slogan we stitch on throw pillows. When we're too tired to argue, I fold my hands and keep my voice warm enough not to scald. Family is a blessing, I say, not a coupon. I let that settle, then continue. Duty is about showing up before the windfall, not after. Responsibility is not the same as entitlement. One's a promise, the other's a bill you wrote yourself. I think of church basements with coffee in styrofoam cups, and the hallway clock speaks again. 3 calm chimes that feel like a warning light blinking on a dashboard. Time has always told the truth in this house. It told it when he didn't call, and it's telling it now. Here's what happens next, I say, easing the words into the quiet, like a chair back into place. We can walk through this together, or I can have someone else in the room while we do. Their eyes flick to the folder, then to the front door, as if options were hanging on the coat rack. No one's here to be humiliated, Ad. We're here to be honest. Caius Mercer nods a small reluctant dip. Vesper Mercer folds her hands, knuckles bleaching. There will be a clock on this, I say, not just today, going forward. 13 years taught me that deadlines aren't cruel. They're boundaries with calendars. So breathe, I tell them, and decide whether you're ready to hear the facts. The clock exhales for us. I lean back, not to retreat, but to take the whole picture in the door they crossed, without asking the couch they claimed, without earning the table, where I set down proof instead of pleading. Let's clear one thing, I say, the way a nurse clears a line before medicine flows. The question isn't whether I'll let you stay. The question is whether you'll want to once you understand who you're dealing with. The air shifts. Caius Mercer looks up startled, as if he's hearing my voice for the first time. Vesper Mercer edges forward, curiosity wrestling calculation. I rest a hand on the folder. There's truth in here that changes plans I warn, and a choice that comes with it. If you're here for comfort, you picked the wrong house. If you're here for honesty, buckle in. Outside, a delivery truck rumbles by, ordinary life humming on. Inside the line draws itself neat as a ruled page. I slide the folder open, and the room goes very still. I slide the manila folder toward the center of the coffee table, steady as a cutting board. Paper doesn't bluff. 3 maxed out cards, I say, tapping the first page. A second mortgage opened last spring, and 8 months without a single paying client. Caius Mercer shifts like the couch just grew thorns. Vesper Mercer presses her lips together, the kind of smile that never reaches holidays. I remember learning to read my own statements after years of pretending numbers were for someone else. I remember the first time a clerk called me ma'am, and I realized it meant I could slow everything down. I keep receipts now, I add, for money, for words. The hallway clock marks the sentence like a notary. I turn another page. Late fees a payment plan that isn't planning anything. This isn't judgment, I tell them. It's daylight. I flip to a final line in neat print and leave it there, bright as a porch light. Verified. You don't have the right. Vesper Mercer says, voice wrapped in silk and static. The line might work on neighbors or in-laws. It doesn't work here. I have every right, I answer, gentle as a locked door, to protect my home, to ask for facts before I fund fiction. Caius Mercer tries to play referee, but his hands are empty. I think of every woman I've known who apologized to keep peace and lost herself in the bargain. I'm done bringing peace offerings to a war I didn't declare. Privacy, she attempts picking a new hill. Respect, I return the hill I live on. I tap the folder again. I didn't break into anything. I hired help and asked lawful questions. Their eyes flare at that word hired. It lands like a new lock on an old door. We could have talked, Caius Mercer says. 13 years ago, I reply. Now we document. And I lay the next page down, face up. I didn't go dark, I say. I went to school. Not the cap and gown kind. The Tuesday night in a church, basement kind where the coffee is strong and the handouts are clearer than most marriages. I learned to read contracts without hurrying. I learned to ask for a manager without apologizing. I joined a book club where women swapped cookbooks and accountant referrals. I sat next to a widow who could rebuild a carburetor and balance a ledger. I took a class on budgeting and practiced saying no out loud until it sounded like yes to my future. When the water heater died, I learned to compare quotes. When the roof needed patching, I learned to read warranties. When I finally slept through the night, I learned fear and freedom weigh the same until you pick one. Caius Mercer blinks, surprised that silence can graduate a woman. Vesper Mercer glances at the folder again. So no, I finish. I'm not confused. I'm prepared. The clock agrees. I hired Harlan Keene. I continue sliding over a concise report. Licensed private investigator. Backgrounds. Public filings, nothing a curious stranger couldn't find, just done legally and clean. Names, dates, and balances line up like church pews. Caius Mercer traces a paragraph with his gaze and looks suddenly younger, like the boy who once asked me if monsters were real. Monsters are just messes in the dark, I say, until someone turns on a light. Vesper Mercer opens her mouth, then closes it when she reads a note about a loan from her parents. I didn't bring this to shame you, I add. I brought it to keep us from lying by accident. Harlan's neat summary lists debt totals, late notices, and a business entity that exists more in stationery than on streets. I remember the first time I asked someone to write a thing down. It felt like buying rain boots before a storm. We won't drown in guesswork today, I say, and flip the page. This, I say, lifting a slim packet, is from Calder Yates, my financial planner. He taught me that windfalls are highways fast tempting and full of ditches. Guardrails matter. The document is plain English by design. No fancy graphs, just steps, separate accounts, trusted custodian, spending gates, and an emergency brake with my name on it. If I help anyone, I explain it happens through a process that protects everyone, including me. Caius Mercer taps the title page processing that help now has gates instead of gushers. Vesper Mercer tries a smile that suggests she can manage a process. You'll be speaking with Calder, not me, about numbers, I add. I keep the heart, he keeps the math. I think of the first time I told a repairman, I need that in writing. His face changed. So did mine. Guardrails aren't a lack of trust, I say. They're seatbelts. I lay the packet down, snug against the folder like a clasp clicking shut. And this, I continue, setting a cream envelope on top, is from Delphine Arnett, my estate attorney. She writes documents like fireproof doors, quiet until needed. Inside a simple trust beneficiary, rules that reward honesty clauses that do not negotiate with chaos. If I'm generous, I say, the paperwork is more generous than my memory. It remembers when I can't. Caius Mercer swallows at the word beneficiary, the way folks do when wills stop being stories and start being sentences. Vesper Mercer scans the header and recognizes the seriousness. She's seen envelopes like this open families like cans. This isn't a threat. I say calm and clean. It's a boundary with a lawyer's signature. I think of the first safe I bought, how the key felt heavy, how sleeping felt lighter. If care is needed, I add provisions exist. If character is tested, provisions stand. I tap the seal once. So if we talk about help, we speak the same language, documented care. Let's drop the confetti, I say, folding my hands. This isn't a reunion. It's a rescue plan with decorations. Caius Mercer opens his mouth to protest, then exhales the wordless truth of a man with bills in his glove compartment. Vesper Mercer tries diplomacy. We wanted a fresh start. I nod. Fresh starts don't arrive with suitcases and scripts. They arrive with apologies and calendars. I think of every time I practiced calling first, not last. Showing up with soup, not a speech. If you'd come last year, or any of the 12 before, with empty hands and clean words, I would have made a bigger pot of coffee. I tell them, silence owns the room for a full breath. This I gesture at luggage and folder is survival dressed up as sentiment. Caius Mercer flinches. Truth has sharp corners. But here's good news, I add softer. Survival can grow up into responsibility. The clock ticks like a coach's whistle. The game changes. I used to beg for a chair, I say, glancing at the dining table that once hosted pity like a centerpiece. Now I own the house, not just the deed, the hours, the habits, the quiet. I know which floorboards complain, which window catches the moon. I scraped paint off the back steps one July and felt something peel off me too. This room is where I learned that loneliness doesn't kill you, I add. It just teaches you what you miss and what you don't. Caius Mercer studies the family photos that stop before his wedding. Vesper Mercer follows his gaze, then looks away first. I will always be your mother, I say, but I am no one's doormat. The words are simple, the kind older women keep in kitchen drawers, with measuring cups and warranties. You're not here to audition for love, I remind myself aloud. You're here to tell the truth. The house seems to nod, the chair feels solid, the begging is over. There's a ghost in this room, I say, sliding a clipped article across the table. Bram Whitaker. The name lands like a cold draft. The piece is a tidy obituary with warmer paragraphs. For animals than for people. He gave his estate to an animal shelter, I add, every penny. Caius Mercer pales. Recognition is a hard mirror. Vesper Mercer calculates fast timelines assumptions, the way people rewrite motives into morals. Back then, I continue approval mattered to him more than affection to me. You wanted to look independent for a man who loved control more than kin. I don't raise my voice. I don't have to. The obituary does the heavy lifting. You cut me off, I say, to look tidy to a wallet that was never yours. A dog in the photo wears a bandana that says rescued. The irony is loud. The shelter got the inheritance, I finish, and I got an education. I let that ring. It rings. You called it boundaries, I continue. You meant optics. Caius Mercer stares at his hands at a wedding band that never learned to dial my number. Vesper Mercer straightens the posture of someone who's kept holiday tables photogenic while dishes piled out of frame. Independence isn't blocking a mother, I say. Independence is paying your bills, telling the truth, and calling back when it's hard. My voice stays even. Most storms are weathered with a steady barometer. You didn't prove you could stand alone, I add. You proved I wasn't welcome to stand beside you. A quiet like church follows the kind that decides things. So let's not call what happened growth, I say. Let's call it a choice. Caius Mercer looks at me, then fully like a man waking up in a room he forgot he built. Vesper Mercer inhales to argue, but the word stalls nowhere. Honest to land. We can start over, I offer, but not start pretend. The clock agrees. There are 3 names for what lived in this house after they left shame, clarity, and freedom. Shame arrived first, sat heavy on my couch, and asked me to apologize to air. Clarity showed up with a notepad labeled drawers and washed the spare sheets. Freedom came last, slow and certain like spring in a stubborn year. I own all three, I tell them. Shame for the begging clarity, for the folder freedom, for the door that locks. Caius Mercer closes his eyes like someone hearing a diagnosis and relief in the same breath. Vesper Mercer studies a photo of a younger me and a younger him, cheeks touching, no script in sight. I'm not punishing you, I say. I'm protecting me. The simple truth sits down beside us, crossing its legs. You may not like that language, I add, but it's the only dialect I speak now. I rest my palm on the folder. The wound has a name. It also has stitches. From here on, I say we deal in facts. No monologues, no smoke. If there is help, it will be written. If there is trust, it will be earned. Caius Mercer nods once like a man stepping into cold water because it's clean. Vesper Mercer folds her hands, surrender or strategy. I'll know soon enough. There's a path I continue, but it walks through accountability. I glance at the clock and feel the day line up behind me. Like soldiers who are tired of wars that never end. We won't hide behind slogans, I add. We won't rehearse sorrow. The folder lies open, calm as a map. We will total what's owed, I say, and we will call things by their names. A breeze nudges the curtains, ordinary life insisting it will go on with or without our courage. I look at both of them. From this moment I finish, only truth crosses this threshold. I turn the next page. The page is waiting. I turn to a page with a clean heading and look up. Tell me about your embezzling partner, I say, letting the words hang the way a teacher lets a class find the answer themselves. Caius Mercer stiffens, then reaches for phrases he's practiced. Betrayal, missing funds, blindsided. Vesper Mercer nods in rhythm, a metronome of agreement, adding details that feel pre-polished late nights, a trusted friend, a business too innovative for the slow. I've heard this melody before. It always resolves to someone else's fault. In another life, I would have hurried to soothe embarrassment with comfort. Today, I let the silence do the hard work. The hallway clock ticks 3 polite taps on the shoulder. I think of older friends who learned the difference between a story and a statement when they started keeping a notebook by the phone. Names, dates, invoices. I say softly, tapping the folder, not adjectives. Caius Mercer opens his mouth and realizes he doesn't have any numbers. I slide a document forward. Soren Pike, your former business partner, I read. Whistleblower. The word is tidy and sharp. The report notes a complaint filed when company funds covered personal expenses. Meals that weren't meetings, trips that weren't clients. A card that learned the wrong tricks. Caius Mercer blanches the color, draining like a receipt left in the rain. Vesper Mercer leans in and finds the line about reconciled accounts. Audit trails emails that say more than they meant to. This wasn't embezzlement, I say, gentler than justice, but firmer than denial. This was someone turning on a light. I think of the first time I opened a credit statement and didn't flinch, how power started with not skipping lines. If a thing is false, I add paper will eventually contradict it. Caius Mercer swallows and looks toward the window, as if the lawn can defend him. It can't. Paper sits between us like a courthouse. The room stops pretending. Another sheet, another heading. Leaf Granger, District Attorney. I read the way nurses read wristbands carefully out loud. A case number, notes, under review, possible charges seeking restitution. I don't rush this part. Older women know pacing is mercy when bad news has sharp corners. Caius Mercer rubs the cushion seam like it's an escape rope. Vesper Mercer goes very still, the stillness people use when sitting in waiting rooms with their jaws set. Nobody has decided anything yet, I say, but decisions are coming. I think of my friends who keep folders of warranties and lab results. They're not paranoid, they're prepared. You called this a misunderstanding, I continue. The DA calls it a file. The word file is heavier than it sounds. I place the page back on the stack and center it with my palm. We can talk about help, I say, but we won't talk around consequences. The clock ticks again. The next chime will not ask permission. I pull a shorter page, a timeline in simple bullets. Loans from Mr. and Mrs. Hale, I say, explained with a medical story that doesn't exist. The quiet pops like a bulb. Vesper Mercer inhales sharply, then closes her eyes. "They're my parents," she says, voice small for the first time today. "We were desperate." I nod. Desperation is a language I speak. Used cars, second jobs, casseroles left on porches without a name. "Desperate isn't dishonest by default," I answer. "But you chose dishonest. The bullet points don't blink." Dates amounts a promise to repay when the lawsuit settles. A lawsuit that was theater. Caius Mercer starts to deny, then sees his handwriting in the margin and looks away. I think of older couples splitting pills to stretch a month and lending money anyway because love is a reflex. You didn't just borrow cash, I say, warmer than scolding. You borrowed their peace. The word lands. It doesn't bounce. There's a kindness in clear words. I've learned that from doctors who don't whisper and mechanics who point to the leak while the car is still on the lift. I fold my hands and keep my tone even. "You're not just broke," I say. "You've been dishonest." Caius Mercer flinches as if the syllables bruised. Vesper Mercer lifts her chin, a last attempt at posture. "We made mistakes," she counters. "Mistakes are missteps," I reply. This was a map. I let that settle. 13 years taught me that truth said cleanly wears people out faster than shouting. If you want help, I add, you'll name the thing you did and stop calling it something prettier. I think of a church friend who kicked the bottle the day she stopped calling it a rough patch. Caius Mercer's voice finally cracks. "We lied," he says. The room exhales. At last, a sentence we can stand on, even if it stings. "I can help," I say, "but I won't hose gasoline on a fire and call it rain." Older folks know this saving someone's feelings for a day can cost them a decade. Here's my frame. I continue sliding the folder's stack into a neat square. Support is structured. Boundaries are non-negotiable. Lifestyle bailouts are off the table. Caius Mercer looks confused, the kind of confusion that appears when easy roads close. Vesper Mercer searches my face for softness and finds only steady. I remember helping neighbors with moving trucks and hospital rides. Help doesn't always look like money. If you stay in this house, I add, it will be as guests under conditions you sign. If you ask for a loan, it will have terms. If you want a new life, you will have a new schedule. The clock marks the sentence like a stamp. I'm offering a path I finish, not a pillow. The distinction changes the air. I open a different envelope, the cream one that still smells like copier heat. "This is from an attorney in Denver," I say, on behalf of Soren Pike. Caius Mercer's eyes widen a flash of the old friendship before money learned bad habits. The letter is short, professional, and colder than January. A demand for $50,000 in restitution tied to withdrawals that didn't belong to a household. Vesper Mercer stiffens at the number. Round figures make reality easier to count. This isn't public drama, I add. It's private accountability. I place the letter next to the DA note, the way you place 2 medications on a tray. Different labels, same purpose. "You called him a thief," I say quietly. "He asked for the money to come back home." Caius Mercer presses a hand to his mouth, not to hide a lie, but to hold in the sound of being cornered by facts. The page doesn't blink, neither do I. There's a deadline. I continue tapping the footer. Tomorrow, 5 p.m., the numbers are plain. Even fear can read them. If the payment plan isn't accepted by then, I add the attorney recommends moving forward with criminal charges. Caius Mercer whispers a word I won't repeat. Vesper Mercer's face drains, then hardens, survival, rearming itself. I lift my chin toward the hallway clock. Time has been talking to us all afternoon, I say. Now it's speaking in bold. I think of every appointment I've ever kept, and the relief of knowing exactly when a thing begins and ends. Deadlines aren't cruelty, I add. They're clarity. I set the letter square on the table, as if alignment can help a life stand up straight. "You don't have to like this," I finish. "You do have to choose." The clock answers for me, one measured tick. The sound of a line becoming a rule. I take a breath and tell the next truth. "He called me," I say. right after the paper ran the piece about my lottery win. Caius Mercer looks stung. Pride hears betrayal before it hears logic. Vesper Mercer studies me like I've joined a side. He didn't ask me for money, I add. He asked me to know what I was stepping into. I think of the first time a neighbor warned me about a contractor, how that warning saved me $3,000 and a month of headaches. I told him I wouldn't protect anyone from consequences, I continue, but I would protect myself from pretending. The word pretending has heat, it burns off fog. So yes, I say, I'm fully informed, and so are you. Caius Mercer nods once, shame and anger wrestling, like brothers in a back seat. Vesper Mercer crosses her arms to keep from shaking. We all hear the clock. It isn't judging, it's counting. I lean in elbows on my knees, the posture of real conversations at real kitchen tables. Here's what I'm watching for, I say. Do you take responsibility, or do you run Caius Mercer's eyes shine the way a grown man's do when the boy in him knows he's out of road? Vesper Mercer stares at the letter as if it might blink and change the number. Responsibility sounds like, we did this, we will fix it, tell us where to stand, I continue. Running sounds like, you don't understand, it's complicated, we just need a little time. I think about older friends who finally got free, the day they stopped negotiating with what hurt them. If you choose responsibility, I add, I will walk beside you with conditions. Every word is a step. If you choose running this conversation ends with the door. The clock ticks, and for the first time they hear it as a finish line. The room holds its breath until Vesper Mercer's breaks. We're losing everything, she says, voice fraying like a worn sleeve. The admission changes the temperature, not because it shocks me, truth rarely does, but because it's the first sentence she hasn't polished. Caius Mercer covers his face with both hands the way men do in emergency rooms when the nurse says sign here. I nod once. Losing can be a teacher. Everything is a big word, I reply. Start with honesty. Keep your freedom. Rebuild the rest. I think of neighbors who started over at 55 and found out they were stronger at 56. You won't starve, I say. You might be embarrassed. Embarrassed isn't fatal. Prison complicates things. The word has weight, and it needs to. Vesper Mercer wipes her eyes and sits up straighter, the posture of someone about to choose. The clock agrees with her spine. Time does that when truth stands up. I gather the papers into a neat stack like a nurse resetting a tray before the next step. Here's where I say, truth or exit. Caius Mercer looks at the front door, a measurement of distance and dignity. Vesper Mercer glances at the folder, a measurement of proof and possibility. You may speak plainly, I add, or you may leave quietly. Both options are merciful in their own way. Older women know mercy is not always soft. If you stay, every word from this point is real, I continue. If you go, you will not take my peace with you. I stand not to tower, but to anchor the moment. The clock ticks once, then again, each sound a small nudge toward adulthood. Caius Mercer drops his hands and meets my eyes. Vesper Mercer nods just once, as if handing in a paper on time. Will I say which will it be? The house goes quiet enough to choose. The room tilts when Caius Mercer finally names it. 300,000. He says it quietly, like speaking softer might make the zeros shrink. Vesper Mercer stares at her hands. I don't gasp. Older women know there's a difference between shock and information. I breathe the way you do before lifting a stubborn box and ask the next honest question. How much is late, how much is lies, and how much is lifestyle? Their eyes flick to each other, the look of people who have juggled bills and stories at the same time. I think of neighbors who kept a jar of quarters for laundry and a jar of courage for everything else. We're upside down, he admits, and the living room seems to nod at last, a sentence that doesn't dodge. I let the number sit between us like a heavy grocery bag you can't carry far. Then I set my palms on my knees. Okay, I say steady. Here's what help looks like. I'll put up 25,000. I say, voice clear enough to sign. Caius Mercer looks up like a man hearing a door unlock. Vesper Mercer sits straighter. Hope rearranging her posture. I lift a finger. Half goes to retain Rowan Keats, an attorney who knows how to walk people out of messes without pretending there wasn't a mess. The other half goes to certified debt counseling, real paperwork, real budgets, real changes. I set a business card on the table, simple as a coaster, and a flyer printed in plain terms. No cash in hand, no shopping trip called celebration. Everything flows through accounts with grown-up names. I think of the first time I told a mechanic, "Please show me the old parts." He did. I slept well. This is not a reward, I add. It's a lifeline with rules. Caius Mercer nods too fast. Vesper Mercer swallows. Relief flirts with reality. The offer gleams. The edges are sharp. First condition, I say, therapy. Individual, not couples. Weekly, 6 months minimum. Caius Mercer blinks as if I've asked for something more expensive than money. Vesper Mercer folds her arms, a reflex that looks like armor. You don't fix a broken compass by walking faster, I continue. You fix the compass. I think of friends who didn't start healing until they sat in chairs that asked hard questions and waited for honest answers. You'll sign releases so your therapists can confirm attendance. Not content, I add. I don't want your secrets. I want your sincerity. The word lands gentler than rules, but firmer than hope. If you do this, I say, you might learn the language of accountability before a judge teaches it to you in court. Caius Mercer looks at the carpet like it might volunteer. Vesper Mercer exhales a hiss of air and pride. It's not punishment, I finish. It's a mirror, and mirrors don't bargain. Second condition. I say, opening a fresh page. Restitution. Every person you misled, repaid in dollars and in words. Caius Mercer flinches at words more than dollars. Vesper Mercer's eyes shine anger, embarrassment, both. You will write letters, I continue, owning what you did, and outlining your plan to make it right. No passive verbs, no fog. I think of a widow on my street who lent money with casserole warmth and got a cold shoulder in return. Mr. and Mrs. Hale go first, I add. Then the rest. You will not pick the comfortable order. I slide a simple template across the table. Date, amount, apology, timeline. It's amazing, I say softly, how fast shame loses volume when truth speaks up. Caius Mercer nods, a man remembering where the mailbox is. Vesper Mercer dabs her eyes and sits taller like someone ready to earn back a name. The ledger isn't revenge, it's repair, and repair has receipts. Third condition, I say, real jobs, pay stubs, taxes, schedules. No consulting, no one can define. Caius Mercer opens his mouth to explain entrepreneurship. I raise my hand and he closes it, learning a new skill in real time. We are not allergic to dignity, I add. We can stock shelves, answer phones, drive deliveries. Work is medicine when the disease is pretending. I think of the relief in a friend's face when she started the morning shift at the grocery and stopped trying to sell a dream that never bought the rent. You'll send me proof monthly, I continue, not to control you, to confirm you're controlling yourselves. Vesper Mercer straightens a woman who could run a register and a household if someone unplugged the fantasy. Caius Mercer swallows pride, scraping on its way down. If you build honest days, I say honest months will follow. The clock hums approval. Time likes clean calendars. I lean back and let the picture assemble itself. An attorney, a counselor, a ledger, alarms set to mornings that don't cancel. This is the hard road, I say, not a blank check. Caius Mercer nods, grateful, colliding with dread. Vesper Mercer fingers the corner of the letter like it might soften if warmed. You will be tired, I warn. You will be embarrassed. But you will sleep. I think of older friends who love the sound of a washer at 9 p.m. and a conscience at peace by 10. You won't owe me gratitude, I add. You'll owe me honesty, and you'll owe yourselves effort. The words are simple enough to embroider, but I won't. I'll print them and tape them to the fridge next to a list for milk, eggs, and humility. Caius Mercer looks at the hallway clock as if it might offer a nap. It doesn't. Hard road means forward. I point to the door. The exit's there. The work is here. There's one truth left that decides whether this is plumbing or paint. I fold my hands. If I hadn't won the lottery, I ask, would you have called me Caius Mercer? Goes very still like a deer that hears its name. Vesper Mercer shifts as if she could position herself. Somewhere the question won't reach. I wait the way nurses wait for a real number on a pain scale. In another life, I would have rushed in with rescue words. It's okay, it's complicated. Don't worry about it. Today, I protect the silence. It's doing surgery. I think of every holiday place setting I packed away unchipped. How quiet can be a teacher if you stop arguing with it. Tell the truth. I say voice like a porch light, warm, not weak. Caius Mercer looks at the carpet, then at me. The room tightens like a belt before a long job. Every clock I own holds its breath. Probably not, Caius Mercer says. The words sound like he scraped them with both hands and still brought them anyway. Vesper Mercer turns her face either to hide or to listen better. I can't tell, and it doesn't matter. The answer hurts where old wounds remember their street names. It also loosens a knot I've carried under my ribs for 13 years. Older women know this paradox truth can bruise and still be medicine. I nod once, not to reward the confession, but to anchor it. Thank you, I say. I think of the first time a doctor stopped guessing and named what ailed me. The plan could start then. Plans don't begin with fantasies. They begin with facts. The house seems to exhale boards settling air cooling. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Then I reach for the next sentence, the one I promised myself I'd give if we ever got this far. It tastes strong. It doesn't tremble. I forgive you, I say, and the room tilts again. This time towards something sturdier. Caius Mercer blinks hard. Shoulders shaking like a man who has held his breath through 3 winters. Vesper Mercer lets out a sound that isn't quite a sob and isn't quite a laugh. I lift a palm before relief mistakes the road. Forgiveness doesn't return the spare key I add. Trust is earned, not gifted. You will earn it like a paycheck, slowly with proof. I think of a neighbor who planted perennials after a bad year. The flowers didn't rush for her. They came back because she did. You may feel better today, I continue. Good. Tomorrow you work. Caius Mercer nods like a man agreeing to carry his own boxes. Vesper Mercer swipes at mascara and sits up straight. Forgiveness is for my heart, I finish. Trust is for my door. The difference hangs in the air, clean as line-dried sheets. I stack the papers into a square, the way nurses reset trays between patients. There's one more term I say. If you lie again about money, about effort, about anything that touches this plan, the bridge burns, permanently. Caius Mercer winces the flinch of a man who stepped on that board before. Vesper Mercer swallows and nods small but real. This isn't punishment, I add calm as a policy. It's the only way boundaries stay alive when feelings get loud. I think of the first time I told a contractor, stop, we're done here, and meant it. The house got safer that afternoon, so did I. If you catch yourselves reaching for the old script, I say call me first with the truth, or call Rowan Keats with a question. Do not call your pride. The hallway clock approves one firm tick. Caius Mercer meets my eyes without blinking. Vesper Mercer nods again. The red line glows. Nobody trips it today. Can we have time to think? Vesper Mercer asks, voice careful, like stepping onto ice. No, I answer, gentle as a closed drawer. You don't need time. You need to choose. Caius Mercer flinches at the word, then straightens. I remember job offers that sat on my kitchen table while the rent didn't wait. Grown-up choices are yes or no, not maybe. Here are your yeses. I say, tapping each Rowan Keats counseling restitution work. Here's your no anything that smells like the life that broke you. The clock doesn't chime, but we hear it anyway. Vesper Mercer looks at the letter from Soren Pike and then at the door. This isn't a cliff, I add. It's a staircase. You'll climb it or you won't, but you cannot sit on my step and call it progress. Caius Mercer breathes and steadies and gives the smallest nod. The air shifts. Decision has a sound when it arrives on time. The clock in the hallway lifts its voice, 5 calm chimes like a judge tapping the bench. I repeat the time so no one can pretend they misheard. 5 p.m. tomorrow, I say. Caius Mercer nods the small, stubborn nod of a man who knows a chapter is closing either way. Vesper Mercer grips the handle of a suitcase that suddenly looks heavier. We stand together in the entry like people waiting on different trains. I open the door. Evening air carries cut grass and the distant thunk of a mailbox closing ordinary life, doing what it always does. They step over the threshold quietly. Apologies don't trail behind them, but something softer does relief in the shape of a plan. You have what you need, I remind them. Choose. Caius Mercer meets my eyes and says nothing. Vesper Mercer looks at the folder one last time. I close the door as cleanly as a sentence that finally found its period. The lock clicks, the house exhales. Morning light sharpens the kitchen. I'm halfway through my first cup when the phone rings at 8:47 a.m. The number is familiar and foreign at once. I let it buzz twice, then answer. We accept everything Caius Mercer says, his voice stripped of echo. All of it. In the background, Vesper Mercer adds steady, "We're ready. I don't rush to praise." Older women know relief is not the same as reform. Good, I say. Get a pen. We list the steps so fear doesn't invent new ones. Attorney first counseling intake, second letters started tonight. I picture older friends pinning grocery lists to a corkboard milk bread courage. So nothing gets forgotten when the day gets loud. You'll text me confirmations, I add. Screenshots, times. Caius Mercer agrees without bargaining the way a man does when he ran out of shortcuts yesterday. Vesper Mercer says, "Thank you," and for once the words land without angles. I hang up. The day stands up with me. By 9:30, I'm at the table with my planner, open the kind with tabs because tabs calm storms. You will be at Rowan Keats's office by noon, I say over the speaker, and at the counseling center by 3. Caius Mercer repeats the addresses back slowly, like a man learning a prayer. Vesper Mercer adds the suite numbers and asks about parking, good practical questions, the kind that keep people honest 1 hour at a time. I email the retainer info and confirm a first visit discount they qualify for, because the world, despite everything, still has small mercies. This is what help sounds like, I tell them. Times, doors, chairs you sit in. I think of every waiting room I've ever survived with a magazine older than my last birthday and a hope newer than morning. Send me a photo when you arrive, I finish. No selfies, just a door with a name on it. They promise. The promise feels like a receipt. I dial Soren Pike next. He answers like a man who keeps his phone charged and his conscience simple. Update, he asks. They accepted, I say. Attorney meeting at noon, counseling at 3. They'll start restitution letters tonight. I don't ask for favors. I ask for procedures. If they enter a written plan and hit every mark for 6 months, I continue. Can you recommend a pause on charges to Leaf Granger? There's a silence that sounds like thinking, then a measured yes. Progress, not performance. Soren Pike says, I'll tell the office. We set a cadence monthly proof quarterly review and an understanding that consequences have a long memory. But we'll listen when truth shows up on time. Before we hang up, he adds, Thank you for not throwing money at a fire. I smile into the room, a quick gust of warmth across cooled ashes. Thank you for the facts, I answer. We end the call. The plan breathes. Paper first, feelings second. I wire the Rowan Keats retainer clean line. Items, reference numbers, emailed confirmations that print nicely and file flatter. My inbox pings appointment at noon, signed engagement letter attached. Welcome packet with words even tired people can understand. A second ping counseling intake forms time slot at 3. A front desk note to expect nervous smiles and bring tissues. I forward everything to Caius Mercer and Vesper Mercer, then text them, check, email. Arrive 10 minutes early. I pour my second cup and stand at the sink watching a sparrow boss, the bird bath, like it owns the block. Change doesn't look grand. It looks like showing up and signing where it says sign. The phone dings again, a photo of a brass directory plate. Rowan Keats, attorney. Good. Another ding, a simple thumbs up. I print the confirmations and slide them into a fresh sleeve for the folder. The house feels taller by half an inch. Paper does that. I text Talia Quinn. They started. She calls instead. Her voice is the kind you pass down steady carrying. Proud of you, she says. Proud of them for standing up. I lean on the counter and let the warmth fill. Places the night left cool. We don't gossip, we plan. I'll take the Monday counseling pickup if they need a ride, Talia Quinn offers. And I can proof the restitution letter's eyes that aren't emotional. I thank her remembering casserole's spare rooms and the day she taught me to say no like it was a complete sentence. Keep your boundaries, she adds a smile in the words. I am, I say. They're written down. Before we hang up, she asks the question sisters ask. How's your heart? I look at the folder, the clock, the light on the floor where morning made a soft landing. Beating in order, I answer. And that's new. We end the call. The thread holds. We fall into a rhythm by accident and then on purpose. Caius Mercer texts pay stubs from a logistics job he took at dawn. The hours are early and honest. Vesper Mercer sends a photo of a handwritten budget where categories have real names instead of wishes. They forward proof of 2 therapy sessions, appointment cards, not confessions. I reply with practical encouragement, the kind older women value. Good. Keep going. Eat something with protein. At night, they draft letters. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Hale, we owe you money and the truth. Vesper Mercer stumbles over verbs. She catches herself changing mistakes were made to we chose. Progress is a tool you hold and use, not a feeling you chase. I tape a calendar to my fridge with check marks in neat rows. That sound you hear at 9 p.m. is my washing machine and my conscience both running smooth. By Friday, no one is cured. By Friday, no one is hiding. Spring decides to stay. Vesper Mercer finds part-time hours keeping books for a local nursery soil. On her sleeves, numbers that add up. Caius Mercer graduates to a route with better pay and worse coffee. He doesn't complain about either. They send updates on repayments, small amounts, steady cadence. I read their letters before they mail them. No perfume, no poetry, just truth and dates. Mr. and Mrs. Hale reply, with tears on paper and 2 lines I won't forget. We love you. Pay us with good choices. I forward quarterly proof to Soren Pike. Bank statements, attendance notes, and 1 simple line from a counselor showing up on time, participating. We celebrate quietly a used couch that doesn't wobble, a dented car paid off with cash. A Saturday afternoon with no emergencies. Older folks know this joy. It sounds like a screen door and a nap. The deadline at 5 feels less like a cliff now, more like a mile marker we passed. 12 months finds us back at a table, different office. Same folder, thicker papers. Soren Pike sits across from me with a new document. Recommendation: suspend charges pending continued restitution. He taps the line where Life Granger signed agreed. I don't clap. I close my eyes for a beat and thank the quiet. Caius Mercer and Vesper Mercer arrive with printed proof balances reduced. Hours worked, letters answered. Their faces look older the better way, weathered, not wrecked. We review terms like adults keep paying, keep attending, keep working. Consequences aren't gone. They're simply listening. Outside traffic hums. Inside dignity does the louder work. I shake Soren Pike's hand and say the same words I said on our first call. Thank you for the facts. He smiles. Thank you for the structure. We leave without ceremony. Growth doesn't need a parade. It needs a calendar that keeps getting colored in with honest ink. 2 years later, the ledger closes neat as a kitchen drawer. Debts paid, letters answered, meetings kept. Caius Mercer brings a final receipt and a dozen donuts no one needs and everyone appreciates. Vesper Mercer carries a binder with tabs, budgets, taxes, even a vacation envelope where money collects slowly like rain in a barrel. I walk my morning lap around the garden and realize I'm lighter than the sky. Here is wealth, my coffee is hot, my phone is quiet. My door locks because I choose when it opens, not because I'm afraid. I think of the day I learned to call a boundary a kindness to myself first, to others. Second, the lottery made headlines, the habits made a life. Caius Mercer thanks me without deflecting. Vesper Mercer hugs me like a person who knows hugging is a privilege. We stand in a house that held its line and by doing so held us all. Freedom has a sound. It's ordinary. The story doesn't end with fireworks. It ends with a porch light and an open comment box. Thank you for listening. I say into the camera, into the room, into any kitchen where a woman is deciding if no is mean or merciful. If anything here helped you draw your line, say so. Your voice might be the hand someone else needs. Caius Mercer and Vesper Mercer aren't props. They're proof that grown-ups can start over if they stop pretending. I hold up the folder not as a threat, but as a tool. Keep receipts, I add, for money, for promises. I think of older friends who solved big problems with small, consistent steps, calendars, envelopes, early bedtimes, honest phones. Share your story below. I finish. Tell us the boundary that saved you. The clock ticks once a friendly nudge. Toward the next hour, we'll try to live well. I close the book on the table. The light stays on. This is my reward. I drew a line and held to my dignity. I learned that a line isn't a wall. It's the front door I choose to open. Forgiveness, yes, but forgiveness isn't a spare key. Trust returns slowly, like a good night's sleep, after tough times, night by night. Family is a gift, not a coupon, and it never erases the consequences. Love remains love when it's carefully preserved. Wealth isn't a ticket with numbers. Wealth is the quiet power of choice, what I accept, who I welcome, how I use each moment. Now I keep the receipts for money, for promises, for peace. If you hear yourself somewhere in this house, let this be the light on your porch. Draw a line, then hold on to it. And if any boundary has ever saved you, your health, your home, your heart, write it down below. Your voice might be the hand someone is looking for tonight. And subscribe to my channel so we can meet again for more stories.